Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I am your host, Chris Angle. The purpose of the Philosophical Angle program is to define concepts in current media. And I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. And one can view these at www.philosophypublishing.com. If you want to participate in making comment to the show, you can email us at the email noted on that website. With me is co-host and colleague Rick Samuelson, a venture capitalist on the West Coast. Good to see you, Rick.
Good to see you.
This week the topic is how are the poor best served by the governmental agencies that produce all the welfare programs. As you know, that these programs are terribly inefficient. They produce results that are dismal. You look at all the cities throughout the nation, the inner cities of it's just not producing any good results. And so, how can we fix this? We look at the record of the Democrats, because they've controlled pretty much the governments of all the inner cities. We look at the governmental plans involved for those on welfare, such as food stamps and Section 8 housing, and all started by Lyndon Johnson back in the 60s under the Great Society programs. And their inefficiencies are just tremendous. It's probably 80% to 90% inefficient. In other words, the government eats up probably 80 to 90% of all the dollars involved with these administration of these programs, and the results are and the last 10 to 20% actually get down to those who deserve the help. But on the Republican side, have they had any plan at all? No, I dare say no. They just have, since the 60s, have just nodded their head to the programs put forth by the Democrats, and so they've had no good suggestions on their side. So what do you do about it? Because of these inefficiencies and dismal performance, and really there's no alternate plan out there how to help these people and yet get them off welfare and make the program a little bit more efficient. So we need to do something and make these programs better, and the way to do that is provide an incentive into the government, into the programs. And without that incentive, I don't think you're going to see an improvement. So let's talk a little bit about the nature of incentive, so that we can see that it will provide goodness. It'll make these programs more efficient. And the reason why it is important is that because incentive runs all of life. That means that the conclusion of our decisions are all based on incentive. And so let's define incentive. We need to know what it is. All decisions are based on the priorities set inside of our sacrifices versus our rewards. So every day in all of life's decisions, we strive and put forth our knowledge and information, our effort and time amidst an environment of risk to achieve something that we want, and which is our reward for our effort in our sacrifice. We do this because the reward harbors goodness, and this goodness hopefully accrues to our life after the sacrifice that we make. All of life seeks goodness for its betterment. And not only do we seek goodness for our own particular benefit, but we do it also for the benefit of our families and secondarily for others in society, and which is the nature of ideology, by the way. And thus, incentive is the ratio between the sacrifice and the reward. And the less the sacrifice and the greater the reward produces a greater incentive. And conversely, as the sacrifice increases and the reward decreases, the incentive naturally decreases. So with this in mind, we can now apply this principle of decision making into our question of how best to construct a government program that sponsors a safety net for those who are indigent or unemployed in American society. Well, as we just mentioned, incentive is how all of life works. So our purpose here is to lessen the sacrifice and increase the reward for those striving inside our objective, which is to help the poor and unemployed. Now, we have to consider what it is about incentive that makes it so important inside economics. Well, the most important thing in economics is that which promotes growth, and economic growth is governed by efficiency. Therefore, when an economic efficiency appears, wealth is created, and wealth is the accruement of goodness from previous rewards made from previous sacrifices. The essence of efficiency is that the sacrifice and the ingredients that make up the sacrifice are less while enabling as much or more reward to be produced. Thus, when we strive to make a reward for the making of our sacrifice, which is using our information and knowledge and our time and effort, and when we use less of these ingredients, yet are able to produce an equal or greater amount of reward, we have economic growth. Well, the impetus to go out and make an efficiency is the incentive. In other words, it is that as we lessen the sacrifice through making less time, less effort, or an increase of the information knowledge, we get a greater reward, which brings us more benefit. Efficiencies produce a better risk or incentive reward ratio. So let's see if we can employ these principles and concepts to make a governmental system so that the indigent are better served. So we're going to we now conclude that and we have since the 60s, we conclude that we need a safety net of some sort. We just need to know how to make it more efficient because it's such a disaster. Well, we need to combine it with welfare into one system, because we have unemployment and we have welfare. And these are two systems which really are the same thing. I mean, after all, not having employment is really what produces welfare. And so welfare equals unemployment. So really it's the same thing and should be combined into one governmental program. And it should be combined because it really is nothing else but unemployment insurance, because the purpose of welfare is you look to the future to get off welfare and get on to and become employed. So it would be best served if an unemployment insurance program, which encompasses all of welfare, be administered by local nonprofits from that area. And these nonprofits would produce counselors. And they would have, of course, various parameters by which they work. They would make you seek for a job, the welfare person seek for a job, and they would try to get them educated and seek education for them, and the way to get the counselor to have more success would be to provide him incentive, as we spoke about that. Maybe a bonus for getting them off welfare under a certain amount of time, getting them into a school program, uh, getting them into a job, getting whatever it is. As he becomes successful, he gets a bonus, and and he should work for a nonprofit instead of the government. The government would administer to the nonprofits the money that they need to go ahead with their counseling and with their and the incentives would be provided by the nonprofit in a matter of a bonus. So let's ask Rick what he thinks about whether this is a good idea or whether there are any other good ideas out there that would be able to make welfare more efficient and make the whole thing better. I mean, as we see, it's just a total disaster. What do you think, Rick?
Well, let me start with a few observations. One, the high school graduation rate across this country is around 80%. This is a staggering figure. In other words, 20% every year, year in and year out, of high school students don't graduate. And that begs the question, so what is this 20% of the whole high school population across the United States qualified to do as a job? They don't even have a high school education. And that's why I'm very suspicious of assertions that there are jobs that Americans can't do. Because surely if you don't have a high school education, your options are extremely limited. You're probably barely literate. And in the inner cities, you aren't literate in many cases. And the statistics bear that out. One idea would be to offer a bonus to high school kids to graduate from high school. All right? We'd have to agree on a number. Is $3,000 the right number? Is $2,000 the right number? Is $5,000 the right number? A straight cash bonus which goes to the student upon graduating with a certain grade point average. Because unless you raise the graduation rates, you're not going to be able to produce enough high school graduates that are qualified to do much of anything, much less go to college. All right, so all the talk of Hillary Clinton about making college free really misses the point when you've got 20% of your high school students not even graduating. This is a far bigger, more important drag on unemployment in the United States. Secondly, it's long past time that we drive down the rates of immigration. The fact that the government advertises unemployment at 4.9% when it's actually more like 9%, according to economists like Stiglitz and others, and uses that as some sort of advert to mollify the masses that the economy is doing well, is belied by the fact that there's no wage inflation here. If we were actually at full employment or anywhere close, you would have significant wage inflation. And wage inflation, by the way, is what drives inflation. That is the primary source of inflation in any economy. So the fact that we don't have any sign of that whatsoever tells you that, the 7 million males who are out of work and not looking for work, and others that aren't counted, are a very large percentage of the population. These people depend on welfare, they depend on workers' disability, they depend on food stamps, and the fact that they can and survive on that basis is an incentive not to work. We are paying people not to work. That's actually what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And we've been paying more over the last 8 years, year on year, than we have for a number of years in the prior administration and the administration before that. So the tendency to pay people not to work through these various programs, which, as you rightly point out, eat up most of the funds in simply administration, uh, first serves as a circular, um, self-enforcing phenomenon that's going to lead to generational uh, effects of families not working for years on end. And this is actually what is happening. So another high priority is to cut back immigration and make it solely based on companies having to hire specialized skills overseas, and recruiting workers for various purposes that are in highly technical areas. That's where immigration should be focused. Nowhere else. Not in reuniting families, not in taking on refugees, not in meeting certain diversity requirements. All that should be thrown out. Uh, the third thing is welfare, food stamp, and other sorts of payments of that nature. And as you rightly point out, there's an alphabet soup of programs out there. These should be systematically cut back. Year after year, there should be a percentage reduction in the awards made. Is the right number 10%? Is the right number 20%? The aim should be to drive these payments to zero as quickly as possible, because that's an incentive for people to get out and work. And as you cut back on immigration and create more tension in the labor market, so there are jobs available for these people that lack high school degrees and lack other specific skills, gradually you begin to take up some of this slack. But as things stand, there remains enormous slack in the United States labor market that's not being addressed by any agency in the government.
Okay. Hey, you mentioned a bonus for kids after graduation. Is that a pre-welfare bonus, or is it just a bonus to? Go ahead.
It's a one-time bonus. It's not a future stream of payments. It's a one-time bonus. You get your degree, you get paid a cash payment.
Is this good for all high school graduates throughout America, or just for those in? Oh.
Yes.
That might be
and by the way, it's cheap. If you consider for a moment what Hillary Clinton is proposing in terms of free 4 years tuition at all state schools, this is a pittance compared to that.
Probably. But wouldn't the payment to those who graduated from high school, is it? I want to clarify again, to all students or just those in needy areas like the inner cities?
Well, I think it should go to all students, because here in Gig Harbor, which is a wealthy community, we have an 80% graduation rate. This is appalling.
Oh, that is a
Go to
surprise.
Fairfield, Connecticut. You'll find the same thing. It might be 85%.
85% of the students enrolled in the early years graduate, and 15% don't graduate.
Right.
Okay.
The overall level for Massachusetts, 85%.
Okay, so this bonus would be the incentive for those to graduate and become more educated and avoid welfare altogether.
Yes, and remember, in terms of technology, this is a moving target. We need workers who are more skilled, not less so.
That's right.
Automation is going to eliminate more and more of these completely unskilled jobs. And so if you're going to get ahead of that trend, you're going to have to get as many kids through high school as possible, and then through specialist trade schools, if not college and graduate school as well. But if you don't start with the high school level, where the biggest numbers are, you can't possibly hope to boost the number of skilled workers at later educational levels.
Okay.
This is the low-hanging fruit, and no one talks about it.
Right. Except here on the Philosophical Angle program. And okay, Rick, I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Philosophical Angle.
Thank you.